My name is Margaret Chen, and I'm 62 years old. After 35 years of marriage, my husband left me for a woman half his age. The divorce took everything. My home, my savings, my sense of who I was. I moved into a small apartment on the east side of town, the kind of place where the heating barely works and the walls are paper thin. I worked as a receptionist at a dental office, but the pay was modest. Some weeks, I had to choose between groceries and medication. That's how I ended up on that street corner. Not begging exactly, just sitting there with a cup, hoping for small mercies. Sarah Williams was 34 when her own world fell apart. Her husband James had an affair with her best friend. The betrayal cut so deep she could barely breathe. The divorce left her emotionally shattered. But she threw herself into her work as a financial consultant. She got a promotion, a good salary, and a new apartment downtown. Every morning, Sarah walked the same route to her office. And every morning, she passed an elderly woman sitting quietly on the sidewalk near the coffee shop. The woman never called out or made a scene. She just sat there, dignified somehow. Despite her worn clothes and tired eyes, something about her reminded Sarah of her own mother, who had passed away 5 years earlier. That resemblance tugged at something deep inside Sarah's heart. One morning, Sarah stopped. She bent down and placed a $20 bill in the woman's cup. The woman looked up, surprised, and whispered, "Thank you, dear. God bless you." Sarah smiled softly and walked on. That single act became Sarah's routine. Every morning, she would stop, leave some money, and exchange a few words with Margaret. Sometimes $5, sometimes 20. Whatever she could spare that day, Margaret never asked for more. She simply accepted the kindness with genuine gratitude. Over weeks, they began to talk. Short conversations at first, about the weather, about the pigeons that gathered nearby, about the changing seasons. Margaret learned that Sarah was recovering from a painful divorce. Sarah learned that Margaret had been a piano teacher before her life fell apart. They discovered a connection neither expected. Two women, different ages, both healing from betrayal. 3 months into their morning ritual, something changed. It was a crisp October morning, and Sarah bent down as usual to leave her daily gift. But this time, Margaret reached out and grasped Sarah's hand with surprising strength. "Sarah," Margaret said urgently, her eyes intense. "You've done so much for me. I need to tell you something important." "Don't go home tonight," Sarah froze, confused. "What? Why?" "Please, trust me. Stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow morning, come find me, and I'll explain everything. But please, don't go home tonight." The old woman's grip was firm, her gaze unwavering. Something in her voice carried absolute certainty, almost like a premonition. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Margaret, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I can't explain now, not here. But I would never mislead you. You've shown me such kindness these past months. Please, just this once. Trust me." Sarah walked to work in a daze. All day, Margaret's words echoed in her mind. It seemed absurd, mystical nonsense, perhaps, but there was something in the old woman's eyes that haunted her. By 5 o'clock, Sarah made her decision. She booked a room at the Hampton Inn across town. She texted her neighbor that she'd be away for the night. Then she checked in, ordered takeout, and tried to convince herself she wasn't being foolish. She barely slept, wondering what could possibly justify this strange request after dawn. Sarah rushed to their usual meeting spot. Margaret was already there, looking exhausted but relieved. "You stayed away?" Margaret asked immediately. "Yes," Sarah said, sitting down beside her on the cold pavement. "Now please, tell me what this is about." Margaret took a deep breath. "Yesterday afternoon, I was moved along by the police to a different corner, 3 blocks from here. I ended up near your apartment building. I saw your ex-husband arrive with another man. They let themselves into your building using a key." Sarah's blood ran cold. "I followed them inside," Margaret continued. "I'm just an old woman. People don't notice me. I heard them talking in the stairwell." "Sarah, they were planning to rob you. Your ex knew you kept important documents at home. Financial papers. Apparently some valuable jewelry from your grandmother. They were going to break in last night while you slept." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, there's more," Margaret said quietly. "I heard them mention something about making it look like an accident. If you woke up, the other man, he had a weapon." Sarah's shock quickly turned to cold fury. She pulled out her phone and called the police, then called her lawyer. Margaret agreed to give a statement about what she'd witnessed. The police took it seriously. They staked out Sarah's apartment that evening. Sure enough, James and his accomplice showed up just after midnight, using James's old key to enter. They were arrested immediately, caught with burglary tools and the weapon Margaret had described. The evidence was overwhelming. James had violated the restraining order from the divorce. He'd planned not just robbery, but potentially much worse. The prosecutor built a solid case, and Margaret's testimony was crucial. At the trial 6 months later, Margaret sat in the witness stand. No longer the woman from the street corner. Sarah had helped her get back on her feet. A small apartment, some decent clothes, reconnection with her estranged daughter. James received 8 years in prison. His accomplice got 10, but the story doesn't end with revenge. That's not what this is really about. After the trial, Sarah asked Margaret to lunch. They sat in a quiet CF, two women who had saved each other in different ways. How did you know? Sarah asked. How did you know they'd come that specific night? Margaret smiled sadly. I didn't know for certain, but I heard them discussing it, and I heard the urgency in their voices. I took a chance. After all you'd done for me, I couldn't let anything happen to you. You saved my life, Sarah said quietly, and you saved mine first. Margaret replied. Those mornings when you stopped to talk, when you treated me like a person instead of invisible. You gave me back my dignity. You reminded me I still mattered. Sarah reached across the table and took Margaret's weathered hand. I want you to come work for me. My firm needs an office manager. I know you have skills they'd value. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Sarah, I'm 62 years old, and you're sharp, observant, and trustworthy. Those are the qualities I need. Margaret accepted the position. She started slowly, part-time at first, but soon became indispensable. Her years of running a piano teaching studio had given her organizational skills that translated perfectly to office management. Sarah helped Margaret reconnect with her daughter, Linda, who had been estranged since the divorce. The reunion was tearful and beautiful. Linda apologized for losing touch during the hardest time. Margaret forgave her immediately. 2 years later, Sarah met someone new, a kind architect named David who had also survived a difficult divorce. They took things slowly, both cautious. From their past wounds, Margaret attended their small wedding. Sitting in the front row like family. At the reception, Margaret gave a toast. Her voice was stronger now, confident. I learned something important sitting on that street corner, she said. I learned that kindness is never wasted. Sarah gave me small gifts every morning, never knowing if they mattered. But they did. They mattered more than she could imagine. And when the moment came, I was there to return that kindness in the way she needed most. She paused, looking at Sarah with deep affection. We think of revenge as something dark. But the best revenge against those who betrayed us is simply to live well, to find joy again, to build new connections. That's what we've both done. Late that night, after the wedding guests had left, Sarah and Margaret sat together on the hotel balcony, watching the city lights. Do you ever think about James? Margaret asked gently. Sarah considered this. Sometimes, but not with anger anymore. He made his choices, and he's living with the consequences. I'm living with mine. And mine turned out pretty wonderful. That's wisdom, Margaret said. Real wisdom isn't about never being hurt. It's about what you do after the hurt. What you do is pretty simple. Sarah smiled. You show kindness to strangers. You take chances on connection. You trust that good things can still happen, even after betrayal. Especially after betrayal, Sarah said firmly, because the alternative is letting the betrayal win, letting it make you hard and closed off. I refuse to give James that power over my life. Margaret nodded slowly. I wish I'd learned that lesson sooner. I spent a year feeling sorry for myself, invisible on that corner. It wasn't until you saw me, really saw me, that I remembered who I was. 5 years later, Sarah and Margaret still meet for coffee every Tuesday morning. Margaret is 67 now, still working part-time, still vital and engaged with life. She's rebuilt her relationship with her daughter and has a wonderful bond with her 2 grandchildren. Sarah and David have a daughter of their own now, 3-year-old Emma. Margaret is her honorary grandmother, the one who plays piano with her and teaches her songs. Sometimes Sarah thinks about that October morning when Margaret grabbed her hand and warned her not to go home. She thinks about how a simple act of daily kindness created a chain of events that saved her life, brought justice, and gave 2 lonely women a family again. The real revenge against James wasn't his prison sentence, though justice mattered. The real revenge was this. Sarah built a beautiful life, full of love and trust and joy. She didn't let his betrayal define her story, and Margaret, who society had rendered invisible, became visible again. Valued, loved, essential. One Tuesday morning, as they shared coffee and pastries, Emma playing at their feet, Margaret said something Sarah would never forget. "You know what I've learned. Betrayal reveals character, but it doesn't have to define it. James's betrayal revealed his weakness and cruelty, but your response to it revealed your strength and kindness. You chose to remain open to life, to keep giving, to keep trusting. That's courage." Sarah squeezed her hand. "I learned that from you. You never became bitter, even when you had every reason to be." "Oh, I was bitter for a while," Margaret admitted, "but bitterness is heavy to carry. Kindness is lighter, and kindness attracts more kindness. That's not mysticism. It's just the truth about how the world works." They sat in comfortable silence. 3 generations of women who had found each other through chance and choice, through small mercies and profound connections. Outside, the city moved at its usual frantic pace. But in this small CAF corner, time moved more slowly, more deliberately. Here was proof that love and kindness could triumph over betrayal, that strangers could become family, that the smallest gestures could change everything. Margaret had given Sarah her life. Sarah had given Margaret her dignity. Together, they had both found something neither expected: a second chance at joy, and the wisdom to embrace it fully. That's the real story. Not revenge, not even justice, though both played their part. The real story is about 2 women who refused to let betrayal have the final word, who chose connection over bitterness, who saved each other in the ways that mattered most, and they lived forward, carrying that lesson with them, teaching it to Emma and Linda's children, spreading kindness like seeds that would take root in ways they'd never fully see. Because that's how it works. Small mercies given freely create ripples that extend far beyond what we can measure. That's the gift Margaret and Sarah gave each other. And it's the gift they continue to give the world every single day, simply by living well and loving fully despite everything that tried to break them.